implementation of the Matatag curriculum seems to be problematic based on the case studies that we have spoken to. What needs to happen here, do you think?
Well, generally, I saw a review by PIDS on the Matatag curriculum. During the last school year, it was pilot tested. And based on the review of the pilot test, it seems like majority or majority of our teachers and our school heads are in favor of the Matatag curriculum because it reduced competencies by 70% and increase the number of hours for students to learn and for students to absorb the lessons. It's important also for students to master the lesson. So this year, the Mandatag curriculum is fully rolled out in grades in kindergarten, grades 1, grades 4, and grade 7. And based on the department order and also from feedback from the implementers, our teachers, and our principals, there seems to be the Matatag curriculum seems to have a lot of subjects being taught every day. I'll give you a case in point like GMRC. GMRC is now a law and it's mandated to be part of the lessons. However, it's being taught every day, and we actually urge the Department of Education to take a look whether GMRC can be taught maybe in lesser days, let's say 3 times a day, and the other lessons like Araling Panlipunan can be taught in lesser days instead of every day.
Okay, so in short,
What's
Senator?
important is more time for students to learn and more time for teachers to teach and for students to master the lessons.
Okay, so in short, what you're trying to say, and based on what you've heard and all the feedback, as well as the studies and the pilot test, sa madaling salita, kailangan pang i-further refine yung Matatag curriculum.
I think the pilot test, the pilot test during this last school year enabled DepEd to fine tune the Matatag curriculum because it's fully rolled out in 4 grade levels. However, still based on feedback, still based on the department order that was released recently. There seems to be room for room for adjustment, especially on subjects.
Okay, you also said, and this quote of yours was carried by a lot of news outlets, the NLRP, the National Learning Recovery Program, that is yung panghabol ng mga estudyante after the COVID pandemic. You said it needs massive reform. Can you tell us what you've seen not go right with the NLRP?
The National Learning Recovery Program was intended to help our students who suffered during the pandemic. Learning loss is real. And in fact, during the learning, when World Bank conducted the survey on learning poverty, meaning literacy rates of our students, they discovered that 90% of our age 10 students cannot read a simple story. And that is quite alarming. So after the pandemic, the Department of Education launched the National Learning Recovery Program. But we discovered a lot of problems in the implementation of the National Learning Recovery Program. For example, those who need it the most are not acquiring it because it's voluntary. And the assessment prior to the National Learning Recovery Program imposed are not released to teachers. So in other words, teachers don't have any idea which student needed the most and if the students improve after the learning recovery program. And at the same time, it's not targeting students who really need intervention. Almost 60% of the students who participated in this program are the ones who are already advanced in their class.
Okay, so...
And actually, one of the findings as well is that there's serious discrepancies between the actual competencies required of a grade level and the content that's being taught. How do we fix that?
Well, that's a really a big problem because we discovered in the National Learning Recovery Program for intervention, meaning students who need intervention, for students who are supposedly in grade 7, grade 8, are being taught with simple math. And after this program, after this intervention program, they will go back to the regular school. But in the regular school, they will not be taught simple math. It will be much more complex than that, like trigonometry or quadratic equations. So, so obviously the student will really have a hard time catching up because the subjects are very complex. So there needs to be another intervention program, an after school intervention program for that particular student, and that's something that we are going to roll out through a new law called the ARAL program. And the ARAL program calls for a national tutoring program for students who need intervention.
Okay, Senator Gatchalian, we know you're also a co-chair of EDCOM 2, the Education Commission, the second Education Commission. I also read that your first year report is out. What are the pertinent points that came out there, yung issues that we really need to observe? Because we have been talking about this for a few minutes now, and it's so tangled, buhol-buhol siya. Where do we really start? And can we
I think
really... yeah.
two things. No, the report basically one of the most important outputs of the report is basically saying that the three agencies are not coordinating enough. No, we have three education agencies: TESDA, CHED, and DepEd. And these three agencies are not cohesive, coordinating and not cohesive enough that learning outcomes are being affected. I'll give you a case in point, like teacher education. It starts with CHED in pre-service, meaning in college, and then almost 90% of our teachers end up in our public schools, which is DepEd. But CHED and DepEd are not coordinating at all in terms of teacher education. So that's one of the root causes why a lot of our teachers come unprepared when they teach in DepEd, using the previous curriculum, because the previous curriculum are not being taught during the college stage of those teachers. So that is the main focus of the first year report. In so far as your question in where do we start with the basics, reading and math. If we have grade 7, grade 8 students who are being intervened with simple math, that means fundamentals or foundational skills are not being taught at an early stage, and we need to focus on that at an early stage.
Okay, I wanted to hone in on something you said, Senator. Like you said, magkakahiwalay yung tatlong ahensya, yung CHED, yung DepEd, pati yung TESDA, right? But it was EDCOM 1 actually that the findings of EDCOM 1 was to separate these three departments. And can we then say na maybe that was a bad idea to begin with?
No, EDCOM 1 also suggested that there should be a coordinating council, the National Education Coordinating Council. That was never implemented since EDCOM 1. And that's why I thank the President Marcos right now for creating the Cabinet Cluster on Education. This is a suggestion coming from EDCOM 2, based on the findings of EDCOM 1 and also based on the findings that we have conducted in the past year. And one of the fundamental flaws that was not implemented was that coordinating body. And now that coordinating body has been created by President Marcos. And with the recent appointment of Congressman Kiko Benitez in TESDA, I think we will have a good, I'll probably call it the dream team of education has been appointed. Senator Sani Angara is there for DepEd, and then you have Congressman Kiko Benitez there for TESDA. For me, we have the dream team already appointed, and now that team is fused into what we call the Cabinet Cluster for Education. And I think that the problem with coordination will now be solved.